Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and today I am so excited to introduce you to my Inga cowl. Friends, this is my little nod to Christmas in July. You can see I've got all my Christmas colors here, and I'm going to tell you all about it. I want to encourage you to stick around to the end of this video where I'll give you a little discount code for you to go ahead and grab this pattern at one of the very best discount codes around. All right, my friends, let's start off by talking about the inspiration for the Inga cowl. When I looked around my personal crochet wardrobe, I found that one of the things that was missing was a fun holiday themed accessory. When it came time to do something a little Christmassy in December, I didn't really have anything that was Christmassy themed. So when Blue Sky Fibers reached out to me and said, "Would you like to design something in July?" I said, absolutely, and let's make it Christmas themed. Never fear, you do not need to make your Inga cowl in Christmas themed colors if you don't want to. Of course, this is totally optional. However, it was the absolutely total selfish inspiration for this design. I do have to tell you that while I had the perfect colors picked out, finding the perfect color placement was a bit more of a challenge. I actually ended up cutting apart my first sample, which I'll share in a different video, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on that one. I cut apart my first cowl because I just was completely unthrilled with the color combination. I have to say that I absolutely should have known better, and I want you to learn from my mistakes, so I'm gonna tell you the mistake I made. When I envisioned this cowl, I envisioned a colorwork pattern that also faded. But here's the deal. Colorwork crochet works best when you have contrast. And do you know what does not contrast? Fading your yarns. I am the absolute worst when it comes to trusting my instinct, so of course I had the first cowl almost completely done before I was like, you know what? No. This is a terrible idea. So that's why I ended up cutting it apart and starting almost completely over. All right, let's talk about this gorgeous, gorgeous yarn. Because my original inspiration had been to fade between colors, I chose to work with Woolstock Light, which is Blue Sky Fibers fingering weight yarn. What I was gonna do was I was gonna hold two colors together and then switch one color at a time to end up with a fade. As I said in my inspiration, that did not work out, and so what I ended up doing was grouping my colors into two groups, the bold colors and the more soft colors, and then I ended up making sure that as I transitioned through the different colors being held together, that I always kept a more bold or saturated color next to a lighter, less saturated color. In the end, I think that worked out really well. I just want you to be sure that you're careful with your yarn placement so that your cowl turns out really stunning. Another suggestion to help keep really nice contrast would be that you could fade one set of triangles and keep the other set of triangles all one color. That would give some really nice contrast too. Don't worry, there's all sorts of charts and tables within the pattern to help you figure out exactly how much you need of each color so that you can really make your own decisions about yarn colors. Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock Light is 100% non-superwash Highland wool. Now, I think when most people hear that, they'll be like, non-superwash. I really like this yarn. It's got a nice grip to it and is super, super cozy. I think you'll find nothing better than a non-superwash for keeping you warm in the winter. The other thing is, I think when people think both non-superwash and Highland wool, they think of scratchy, and while this does maybe have a little more toothiness to it than something really slick and slippery, it is a nice wear, and I can wear it next to my neck without having any problems. This project is perfect for Woolstock Light because they come in 50-gram skeins, which means you don't have to overbuy a whole bunch of different colors of yarn and have tons left over. One skein of each color is going to be plenty for using it in lots of different transitions throughout this cowl. These 50-gram skeins come with 218 yards in them. I have worked with Woolstock Light a whole bunch, and I have found it to be a really great yarn. It's warm and cozy, but when you use the right hook with it, it's nice and drapey as well. It washes up really nicely, and even though it's non-superwash, superwash, I've had zero trouble washing it. There's been no felting whatsoever. Also, one of the benefits of a non-superwash fiber is that you can do what's called spit splicing. To do that, you just fuzz out the ends a little bit that you're going to connect. I tend to do this when I'm connecting the same color to the same color. Fuzz out the ends, wet them, usually by spitting on them. That's why it's called spit splicing. And then rubbing them together. And what you're doing is intentionally felting the two ends of the yarn together. And then you don't have to weave in those ends. It's pretty handy. All right, let's talk hooks. You guys, this has worked from the bottom to the top, nonstop, no applied ribbing here, and so you only need one hook for this whole entire gorgeous cowl. And what you'll need is a pretty large hook. We're going to be working with a US J10 6mm hook. All right, let's talk gauge and customization. Friends, I have done everything I can to help you make this cowl exactly how you want it to be. Within the pattern, I have given you tips for how to customize both the height and the width of your cowl. There are charted instructions, so you can follow a little visual chart if you prefer that. And then there are also fully written out instructions if that's your preference. I've even included a little chart that's completely blank of color. Then you can go ahead and add your chosen colors to that chart so that there'll be no confusion as you follow the chart as to what color is coming next, because it'll be customized just to you. Like I said, there are stitch counts in there to help you add or subtract stitches to make the circumference more narrow or wider depending on your personal preference, or you could even make it small enough to fit a child. This would be a great opportunity to mix and match some scraps of leftover yarn and would make an excellent gift when the holidays come around. All right, let's talk styling your cowl. While cowls are pretty straightforward for styling, you can easily just toss them over your head. I do have a few tips on ways that you can mix it up a little bit and get a little more wear out of your cowl. This cowl is super great if you need to be really cozy. As you can see, the structure of the cowl helps it to stand up nicely. And if it were cold outside, which obviously it's not in Wisconsin in July, but when it gets cold out, I'll be able to have it up nice and high around my neck and ears to help keep me super, super warm. However, when you go inside, you don't often need this much warmth. So I think a great way to adjust is to fold it in half. You can see I can just fold the front in half, and that brings it down and away from my face, giving me some extra space so I'm not quite as warm. You can also fold it all the way around in half, and that will make it stand up a little more and keep it nice and far away from your neck. The other thing you can do is if you fold up the colorwork part and not just the ribbing, you can see that it can affect how much of your colors show and really change up your color palette. So here, this is really bright and bold with my bright red and bright greens, but if I flip it over and show the other half of my cowl, I've got that nice deep color there, and it really gives a totally different look. Another thing I love to do to make wearing my cowl just a little more versatile is to add a shawl cuff. You can just take the shawl cuff and snap it on to your cowl, and you can adjust several different ways. You can have it off to the side, and it almost looks like a little bow. You can even center it, and you can zhuzh it so that you fold the ribbing down so that the color work shows, or you could do it the opposite direction and scrunch the ribbing in the middle so that more of the ribbing shows in the middle and you've got more of your color work on the back side there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed learning all about the Inga cowl. As a little thank you for sticking around until the end, I have a special discount code for you. Use the code HOLIDAY, all caps, on Ravelry to save 20% off the Inga cowl. Go ahead and use that quick because it's only good July 10th through July 13th, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you loved learning all about the Inga cowl and that you'll go out and make a very special Inga cowl for you, or maybe even some gifts for the holidays. I'm going to link 2 of my Blah Blah Black Sheep episodes in the show notes below. One is about planning out your holiday crafting so that you can stress less. I would love for you to go watch that because it is absolutely my preference that all of us crafters have a much less stressful holiday this year. My other video is about how you can start budgeting now to make sure that you come in under budget on all of your craft projects for the holiday season. I hope you watch and enjoy these videos and find them super helpful. I would love it if you would like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and maybe even share this with a friend. Thank you again for joining me today. Until I see you next time, happy crafting!